This is Sprocket. I get to open up this episode with all of you. This may very well be my all-time favorite episode that I have the opportunity to record with my partner Chubbs. I have the opportunity of introducing my father, my hunting hero, my idol, my foundation, the cornerstone of who I am as a man and an outdoorsman, Jack Ritter, who's also known as Jake. In this episode, we'll cover our hunting relationship together, our outdoor adventures, and or a couple of great stories. And we talk about our return to the Pacific Northwest Sportsman Show. Grab a beverage, turn up the volume, and prepare yourself for some Sprocket and Chubbs.
Are you looking for the best camouflage apparel and hunting packs on the planet? Badlands lives and breathes technology, performance, and quality. Sprocket and Chubbs love the innovative hunting apparel in the Approach and Approach FX camouflage patterns. There is apparel and a Badlands backpack for every hunting style. Badlands also offers their legendary unconditional lifetime warranty. To find out more, visit badlandsgear.com. The king of adjustable pin archery sights, HHA Sports is home of the Tetra Rise 2-pin slider. Featuring a fixed secondary pin and secondary yardage marker, the Tetra Rise allows you to adjust your aiming point at full draw. With a silky 2.1 inches of travel, the Tetra Rise features the longest sight tapes they have ever built for unmatched long-range accuracy. HHA sights are proudly made in the USA and carry a 100% lifetime warranty. Find out more at hhasports.com or visit your local archery dealer today. When you think Latitude Outdoors, you think saddle hunting. Latitude Outdoors is fueled by creativity and obsessed with the details. And their saddles are made right here in the USA. As far as we're concerned, Latitude Outdoors makes the very best hunting saddles on the market. High quality gear that is safe, comfortable, and simply fun to hunt from. There's a Latitude Outdoors saddle for every size and shape hunter out there. Want to learn more about saddle hunting? Go to latitudeoutdoors.com and have fun. Who do Sprocket and Chubbs rely on for our optics needs? Vortex Optics. Binoculars, rifle scopes, rangefinders, and more, Vortex offers premium products that are an investment in your hunting future. Their customers are at the center of everything they do. Their VIP warranty, where the VIP stands for Very Important Promise, means if your Vortex product becomes damaged or defective, they will repair or replace it at no charge to you. For all your optics needs, visit vortexoptics.com.
Good morning, Al.
Good morning, Jake. Nice to finally meet you in, sort of in person.
Yes, certainly is.
How are you this morning, Sprocket?
I'm good. I've been up for a while.
I see that.
Yeah.
You were getting a real early start, making sure everything's up and running.
I'm good. We've had a great week. Great weekend. It's been a fun trip.
I'm excited to hear all about it. So for our listeners, let's jump right in and tell them where you are and why you're there and what's been going on this week.
I am in Washougal, Washington, which is my hometown, where I was born and raised in the same house since I was 4 years old, Dad?
4 or
3?
5. 4.
I think we moved here when I was 4, and they've been in the same house ever since. We celebrated my mother and father's 51st wedding anniversary this last week.
Congratulations.
And my father's 79th birthday this last week.
Another congratulations are in order.
Oldest I've ever been.
And then we also celebrated our return together to the Portland Sportsman's Outdoor Show, the Pacific Northwest Sportsman's Expo or Outdoor Show. First time in 32 years since we've been back to that show together. So we have had a week of celebration and anniversaries and things to talk about.
That's awesome. I've been thinking about that show all week and following your social media and looking forward to talking to the both of you to see how it went and share some input for others around the country, because I think that as we talked about in an earlier podcast, you're from the Pacific Northwest. I'm from the Northeast, and we've kind of swapped positions over the last 20 years. And what can somebody expect from a show like that? Is it similar to other trade shows, or is it vastly different?
It's similar, Al. It is not as big as the NRA show over in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Up until the creation of the Western Expo in Salt Lake City, I believe it was the largest outdoor show west of the Mississippi. I could be wrong, but I believe that's true. For the Western Seaboard or along the Pacific Ocean, it is the largest outdoor show. They have 3 outdoor shows that are part of the Sportsman show tour out here. And of the 3, it is the largest.
So before I ask you, Sprocket, I want to ask your dad, what was it like for you to be back at this show with your son?
It was a thrill. It was fun. It brought back a lot of memories. There was a lot of touching and talking and walking together. It's just great to have the team back together.
Has the show changed a lot since you guys last went?
Well, I thought it got a lot bigger because I'm older and I walk slower. Aaron thought it was a little smaller.
I'm sure that with all the walking that Aaron has to do with all the other shows, this was probably nothing for him. But yeah, I can imagine that the more that I sit in a chair and don't get out to as many shows as Aaron does, I have to keep up with him. Then again, he's got a lot longer legs than I do too. So
he moves quickly.
He certainly does. He certainly does.
Al,
Yeah.
I'd like to start out and introduce my father to our listeners. We're 3 episodes now into our show. We did a big opening episode on who we were. I want to talk about who I'm sitting with here. My father's the foundation or cornerstone of my love and passion for the outdoors. He's the foundation of my thought process and my mentality for hunting and what it means to me and why I put so much time and energy into that world. My father had me handling weapons and firearm safety at a very young age with his father. We started hunting grouse together first. And initially, I wasn't even old enough to attend a hunter safety course when I first started grouse hunting with my father. So I sat shotgun. I asked him for hours about the recoil of every gun I could think of to spend the time. We ate Doritos, we drank soda, and we cruised around the gravel roads and logging roads of Southwest Washington. My job was to try to locate grouse on the side of the road or sitting on stumps or old blowdowns while they were feeding in the evenings.
So your dad was smart. He got you started into something where you could be noisy and learn to be quiet.
He did. He was also smart. He taught me to look for game while driving in a vehicle by betting milkshakes. So if one of us saw a deer or a grouse on the opposite side of the road, then the person on that opposite side of the vehicle owed them a milkshake. So there was milkshakes on the line. Every time we entered a vehicle to go hunt or scout, I had a milkshake riding on that trip. So I was very attentive.
I'm glad my dad didn't do that. I'd be fatter than I am now.
So then we transitioned to hunter safety. I went at a very young age, started grouse hunting first. And great story. We had Wagoneers, Jeep Wagoneers as I was growing up. And we had one that was a light tan. It was called the Mud Puppy. That was the name of my dad's Jeep Wagoneer. Dad and I were cruising down a gravel road one evening and we spotted a grouse on his side of the car. It was on a little bit of a cutout on the opposite side of the road. And that, Dad, what model 410 was that?
Oh, Winchester pump.
Do you remember what model?
42.
Winchester pump model 42. It was long. And I was probably 9 years old. So this shotgun was really, really long for me. So as I was exiting the vehicle and sliding a shell into it, my dad whispers to me, just lay that gun across the hood and slap the trigger. So I did. I just dropped that 410 across the hood of the Mud Puppy and shot across the hood of the Jeep, crossed the road, and hit the grouse. Chambered another shell and trotted over to pick up that grouse. I was so proud of myself. I grabbed it by the neck and I'm holding it up above my head as I'm running back over to the Jeep, not knowing that my father had every intentions of having that first grouse mounted for me. And I pretty much stripped every feather off the neck of that grouse as I ran over to the Jeep. And as we celebrated, we noticed that there was a beautiful cone-shaped powder burn going across the top of the hood of the Jeep from where I shot that grouse. It's been a joke in the family ever since.
That's a great story.
So then we transitioned to deer hunting and elk hunting for the next 10 years. And we hunted all over up near Mount St. Helens. We had property up on the Toutle River, and we hunted around Carson, and we hunted around Glenwood, and we ended up landing over near Klickitat, and we hunted Klickitat for years together for deer, elk, and turkey. And we hunted with my dad's hunting partner and his father and boys, and our camp was a dry camp. It wasn't dry from activity. It wasn't dry from humor. It wasn't dry from having a great time. It was dry from alcohol. And my dad was a focused killer. And that's the environment that I was raised in. When we went to hunting camp, you went to hunting camp to work. There was no sleeping in. You were gone all day. When we came back, we would have dinner. We would talk about who saw what and where. We would plan our hunt activities for the following day. We'd play some cribbage or some gin rummy.
Oh, yeah.
And then we would go to bed because it was a 3:30, 4 o'clock wake up time. And you didn't leave camp when the sun was coming up. You left camp when it was dark. You either walked or were dropped off somewhere, and you were in the timber away from a road when the sun came up. And there were days where you did not hit a road to walk back to camp until it was after dark. We hunted hard. And that's the foundation of my hunting.
I've heard many stories, Jake, that Aaron's told me about him learning to hunt and everything. And I love the grouse story, but I also love hearing the foundation of it. And I think that more people need that these days. And having a good start like that, I appreciate Aaron as a mentor to other people for that reason, and not sprouting from alcohol or other things. It's just the love of hunting and getting out there early. And I tell you what, I don't like to get up 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, but I tell you what, when it comes to hunting, we're up, coffee in hand and ready to go. So we're both raised right.
So everybody knows we're recording this podcast. It's 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Coffee in hand and ready to go.
Everybody's wiping the sleepies out of their eyes. Everybody's drinking coffee. We have our morning voices on. It's 6:30 in the morning. I have a flight here in a couple of hours. So we wanted to rip out this podcast while my dad and I were sitting in the same room together, and before I have to go to the airport. So we're doing a very early recording.
I like it though. I like the change. I don't know how many times I'll say that, but with you two, this would be great.
Dad, what was one of your favorite memories or stories from our time hunting together?
Well, I'll probably never forget the day that we were hunting out of the cabin up in the Mount St. Helens area. And we had split up. I knew the area where Aaron had gone, and he knew the area well enough that I didn't have to worry about him. And I came back to my car after a few hours of hunting, and on the windshield of my car was the esophagus tube of a deer, the windpipe, strapped across the window under the windshield wiper. That was his way of telling me he had a deer down.
The early days of Post-it notes.
Yeah, it got the point across.
Was it pointing in the direction of where he got it to?
So Al, it's great. I told a portion of that story last night at my seminar at the Sportsmen show. We can talk about that in a few minutes. But that was my first deer. And unfortunately, we weren't together when I pulled the trigger on that deer. But it's just great how that story fell together. I was so proud of myself taking the windpipe from my deer and putting it under the windshield wiper of the Bronco 2. I was so excited for that deer. I didn't have a Ziploc bag for the heart or liver, and my mother, my father enjoys heart and liver. My mother loves it. So any harvest that we had, we were always bringing the liver home. I did not have a Ziploc bag with me, so I stripped down and pulled my army green t-shirt off and I wrapped the heart and liver up in my t-shirt. And I walked back to my cousin and I drug my deer over to the side of the road. And then I walked back to the cabin with no shirt on, rifle over my shoulder. And I was carrying the windpipe and that blood-soaked t-shirt full of a deer liver back to camp. And I was shirtless all the way back. And this is in November. It was during the rut. It was cold. I thought I was a real mountain man at that point.
Can you imagine doing that today, running into somebody along the road? It'd be very interesting. But then again, back then it wasn't a big deal.
Dried blood all over my hands.
But did the heart and liver make it back?
Yes, it did.
There you go.
One of my fondest memories, I mean, that's a great memory, but I think one of my fondest memories is we were in Klickitat. I was a teen, probably 15, 16 years old. We hunted with radios back then. They were the big brick-looking Radio Shack radios, Al. I don't know if you remember those.
Oh, yeah.
They weighed probably They weighed like 3 pounds, had a 4-foot extendable antenna. We carried those in fanny packs and backpacks. And we had our camp comms plan was on the hour, every hour. If somebody wanted to talk, you would turn your radio on. And that's when you would talk. If you heard shots, you could turn a radio on. And the only person that would talk after somebody fired their weapon was the person that pulled the trigger. Everybody else would be radio silent. They would just be tuned in to pick up any traffic to find out where they were at and what we needed to do. And we all carried snacks. And I popped on the radio one afternoon, like 11 o'clock on the 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock hour, turned my radio on. And I heard my dad come on the radio. "This is Big Jake. Anybody have their radio on?" So I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm here." So we figured out where each other were, and we were pretty close. We were a short walk from each other. So we met up on the side of this old logging road. We're sitting down having a Snickers bar together, talking about our hunt, having some father-son time, and we carried fanny packs. My dad and I both carried the same fanny pack, these great big fleece fanny packs with no support whatsoever. And we'd probably have 5 to 7 pounds of stuff stuffed into them, and they're sagging down off your hips all day. But man, it sure brings back great memories. But my dad wanders off to go to the bathroom, and within arm's reach of me was this big stone. And there was enough room in his fanny pack to slide this stone in. And we had finished our snacks and we were getting ready to go our separate ways. He had already zipped up his pack, stowed all of his gear, and zipped up his fanny pack. He just went over to relieve himself. So I slid this stone into his pack. Al, he carried that all day. He got back to camp, and when we were unloading our fanny packs in camp, my dad discovered that he'd been packing a 3-pound stone in his fanny pack all afternoon and evening.
Only one of us is laughing.
Yeah, I did notice that.
So fast forward years later, I'm home on leave from the Navy, and we're up standing on the bank of the Klickitat River throwing homemade spinners for steelhead. And my dad takes off his fishing vest to go relieve himself again. And I wasn't quick enough this time. I was trying to load the back panel of his fishing vest full of rocks and gravel from the riverbank, and he caught me red-handed.
See, he's gotten wiser as you've gotten older.
Yes.
It never stops.
It never does. And I look forward to the day that we get my dad on here too, because I'm sure he's got some stories. That pranks are part of hunting. They really are. And hearing something like that, yeah, the 3-pound stone, I say that's funny, but then again, it didn't happen to me. So now I'm going to be watching my pack in camp. So thanks for taking one for the team, Jake.
Stay alert.
The Pacific Northwest Sportsman Show, Al, they celebrated their 46th anniversary this year. I went the first time when I was about 6.
Yeah.
And we went every year till I was 18. And so February of 1991 was the last time Dad and I had been to the Sportsman Show together. We talked about it over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Dad would call and tell me that he went, what he saw, how much fun he had. whether he thought the show was getting bigger, larger, or if it was shrinking. Talked about parking, talked about the people there, talked about the booths that were there. Some years it seemed to be fishing heavy. Some years it was hunting heavy. Some years it seemed to have more boats than others. But it's been 32 years since we were able to go to the show together, and 32 years since I've been home in February for that show. This year, it just so happened that I wanted to come home and celebrate my father's birthday and their 51st anniversary. And the Portland show was the same week as all those other events. So we were able to attend the show together. In that process, I reached out to the expo director, and they had space in their seminar calendar, and they had me provide 2 seminars, one on Friday and one on Saturday. I spoke on Friday on the mindset of a successful hunter. And then yesterday I spoke on tree saddle hunting for big game in the Pacific Northwest. But we had a great time. We spent 2 days at the show. I'm going to let my dad talk about some of the things that he wanted to hit and what he saw and what his impression of the show was this year.
It was a great show. You know, they haven't had a show due to COVID for a couple of years. And so it was really nice to get back into the show. I like to be with other hunters and fishermen, people of like interests. The men are all smiling. The wives are tagging along. Some of them are outdoors women, so they're right in their element too. And it's just a great place to be. And the bigger the crowd, the better. It was a little open the first day we went, but when we went yesterday on Saturday, it was really crowded. The parking lots were all full. The buildings were all full. It was tremendous. Everyone was packing fishing rods and sacks and laughing, and the calls were going off. It was really fun. Aaron introduced me to a lot of people. I'll probably never see a lot of them again, but it was kind of a thrill to meet them. I booked a fishing trip. I booked a turkey hunt. We bought some food, bought some turkey calls, of course. It was really fun. It was a good time. A lot of booths, people really knowledgeable. You get a lot of information. It's fun. I encourage everyone that likes the outdoors to go to a big show.
I like hearing about the crowds and everything. It's amazing how typically you go to some place, like you go to a mall that's crowded. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't stand going to the mall. And nevertheless, when it's crowded, but if I can go to a show, yeah, it's crowded. I mean, like you said, I can almost picture myself there with the calls going off and people talking about hunting, and you're surrounded by everything that you love.
Yeah,
that's great. What was it like to be able to? Now, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did you get to sit in on Aaron's seminars?
Both, yes.
What was it like to be in the audience, getting to participate and listen to your son share his knowledge with everybody?
Well, it's really hard to talk about that without feeling a little too proud. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Aaron, as a small boy, was like a sponge. He soaked up everything, he remembered everything, and he applied everything that he chose to out of what you would teach him. And when you go to his seminars and you see that immediately in everything that he talks about, Aaron knows his subject. He lives his subject, and the excitement that he feels is easily seen by the people in the audience. It almost makes what he's doing come to life to you. Yeah, I was pretty proud, pretty excited. I told a few people, that's my son up there.
I imagine you would.
Yeah.
I was really eager to hear what you thought. I mean, the last time you guys were there, you were walking around together. Now your son's up there being able to share what he's learned. And I mean, just the short couple of years that I've known Aaron, he's still like a sponge, and he still applies everything. And that's what makes fun. You know, it's a fun hunt with him.
Always fun.
Well, I saw that your seminar was posted last night to YouTube, so I'll definitely be checking that out. I'm always eager to hear what fellow hunters, especially you, have to say. It's interesting to see if the dynamic changes from coast to coast or for different hunts. And from what I've seen, you share about the same stuff with people. Just get out there and hunt and enjoy it, be safe, and do the things you love.
Al, it was interesting yesterday, Saturday. My seminar was tree saddle hunting for big game. And I had originally talked with Terry O'Laughlin, he's the show director, of being focused on the backcountry community. and they advertised my show. They titled it as Saddle Hunting for Big Game. And I found at the show when I was walking around talking to people, and I did a little bit of self-promotion out on the main floor, and the speaker ahead of me, he ended his seminar. He closed out about 15 minutes early. So we had the room early, contrary to the first day, and set everything up, and people were funneling in, and I started interacting with people, and I threw out the warning that although my seminar was titled Saddle Hunting for Big Game, it had nothing to do with horses or Western tack or pack mules, that it was about tree saddle hunting. And there was one or two guys that left. They thought that I was going to talk about hunting off of a saddle. And there were several other folks who thought that I was going to talk about horses and hunting from a saddle. And when I described what my seminar was actually about, they stayed. And 3 of them stayed for 30 minutes after my seminar. And if it wasn't for us having dinner plans, dinner reservations as a family, I probably would have been there for an hour after my seminar with those 3 gentlemen. They were so curious and intrigued about tree saddle hunting. It's unknown out here in the Pacific Northwest. They have really no idea what it is. Most people have never heard of it. And when I start describing it, their initial reaction is, well, that just won't work out here. I had one young man tell me, yeah, I go into the deepest, darkest holes on the Oregon coast. That stuff won't fly out here. And I had a great time opening his eyes to the possibilities of a 9-pound saddle rig that would put him up in old growth timber down in the Pacific swamps. And he would be harvesting elk and whitetail out of that tree saddle. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
You touched on something that I think can be applied to the entire West Coast, and saddle hunting is nearly non-existent, even out here, California. I mean, California is a big state. Nobody talks about it. And man, I love it. And the more I've been able to apply what I've learned from you and try it on my own, more people really should learn about that. So I'm glad that you were able to give a seminar in the state of Washington. And I hope that others can jump on that and really watch your video. And if they have questions, they can reach out to you, because the hunting that you guys did, I'm assuming that you guys didn't do a lot of tree stand hunting. You were mobile.
We did not do any tree stand hunting.
No.
Al, I did not sit in my first tree stand till December of 2014. And I've been hunting since probably 1979 or 1981-ish was probably when I started hunting with you, at least grouse hunting. And then moving through until I left for the Navy, we never even talked about tree stands. Sat on stumps, sat on logs, sat on the ground, or you were mobile still hunting all day, every day.
And that's what I found with most hunters on the West Coast, from Washington all the way down to Mexico. They're mobile. They don't sit still. And in New York, that's all we did was tree stand hunting. So when I came out here, being mobile was different. And I love being able to utilize both, but there are some really genuine benefits to hunting out of a saddle. Even here in Southern California, you can get into areas you'd never be able to hunt on the ground, too thick, or you can't have access to certain areas. But man, you find that one tree, you can hunt all day. Was the crowd pretty receptive to everything?
Very, very special. So I brought my saddle rig with me. So when they're able to put their hands on it, you know, the new Latitude Carbon Speed Series stick, it's 19 ounces. My Latitude X-Wing platform is 1.7 pounds. My saddle rig with 40 feet of line and an 8.5-foot lineman's belt and 3 carabiners and my Mad Rock belay device, gear strap, bow hoist or weapon hoist, that whole rig is 5.5 pounds. And when you put that into the hands of a sportsman out here in the Pacific Northwest, it's an eye opener. And when you start describing how they can walk into any drainage, they can walk down in any coastal swamp and climb up into old growth and get into that really thick, heavy vegetation that when you're standing on the ground, you can't see an animal unless they're 10 yards from you, 5 yards from you. But you could climb up over game trails or small pockets and catch movement, and you can sit there for 4 hours or all day if you wanted to with only a 10-pound rig on your back. They're very intrigued now.
There are guys. The crispy boot booth was here, and their Pacific Northwest team was running the booth, and one of the guys there, can't remember his name. I feel really bad. He's their social media director. He and I were chatting, and he was talking about down in Central and Southern Oregon, tree stands are becoming popular, and he was talking about packing a climber around. And I brought my saddle rig into them, and they're all now looking at saddle rigs online, just because you're going from carrying a 20-pound climber on your back to a 10-pound saddle rig, which we all know you can climb pretty much any tree. You're not limited to those climber specific trees now. So I'm pretty positive that the crispy dudes are going to be hunting out of saddles here in 2023.
I can't wait. I'd really like to hear when they first start doing that and have them reach back out to you and tell you how their experience was, because I think that those that do hunt out of a tree stand, and I mean, you saw me struggle in Nebraska. I've hunted out of a tree stand pretty much my whole life, but just having to set that up takes an incredible amount of time. And while you're doing it, you can't hunt while you're setting up your tree stand. You just can't. You have to get everything situated. Well, you can still hunt while you're climbing up in a saddle, and you're not really limited. And I think that it's going to be an eye opener for a lot of people. Were there many tree stand companies or any saddle companies out there?
No, none.
None at all.
None at all.
I mean, the demographic isn't there, but I'm hoping that in the future that we do start seeing more and more saddle companies branch out. The opportunity's there. I mean, you saw it. People attended your seminar. How many people do you think were there? Just curious.
Several thousand. What do you think, Dad?
Easily several thousand.
Man, I wish I could have been there. Could have been a fly on the wall, but I'll live vicariously through you two.
So, Al, our previous episode to this was about the NRA Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I'm going to do a quick recap of comparisons between the two shows. Parking. If you're going to attend an outdoor show, I don't care where you are, go early. Parking is always an issue. And if you wait until the show is open or 1 or 2 hours after opening, you're going to have a difficult time parking. At the Portland show, they actually had people parking in lots 1 mile to 2 miles away, and they were shuttling people by bus back to the expo because they did not have enough parking on site. You're going to stand in line to get inside the building. So if you're attending a show that has online ticket purchase, highly recommend that you do that so that you're not standing in line waiting to purchase your ticket on site, because that line is going to move a whole lot slower than folks that have prepaid for tickets. They provided the option to buy package tickets, so you could purchase tickets for the entire event or a 2-day package. They had VIP events out here, which is they don't do in Harrisburg, other than, well, that's not true. On the last Saturday of the Harrisburg show, they always have a country music singer put on a concert. Out here, they had Born and Raised Outdoors as a huge player in the elk hunting industry and the backcountry industry out here in the West. They're from Oregon. They're from Southwestern Oregon. They had a huge presence here at the show, and they did a film launch. I think it was Friday night. They did a big film launch at the show. On Saturday, yesterday, Randy Newberg and Loophole did their film launch and their VIP event. So you purchase additional tickets for that. But I think that's a great opportunity for outdoorsmen as well, especially if you want to have the opportunity to see some of these current hunting celebrities live and in person. You have that opportunity out here. And for Portland being such a short show, it's only 5 days long. It's Wednesday through Sunday. They have 2 huge VIP film events 2 out of the 5 days, which is different than the NRA show in Harrisburg, which is 8 days. It's 8 or 10 days long, and they have 1 country concert. The people on Friday, as my dad said earlier, there were not as many people, but we weren't there for the last 3 hours of the show.
That's
we were
right.
there. We were there pretty much when it opened, and then we left about 3 o'clock. Well, I left at 5. You left at 3, but it wasn't super busy.
We left before people got off work.
Correct.
Yeah.
Saturday was different. The perspective that my dad shared earlier, I think, is a really good perspective for sportsmen to chew on. And I will communicate it in this fashion. I have a really good friend on the East Coast that loves going to the NRA show, but he goes during the week because he does not want to deal with the crowds. But what does the crowds mean at an outdoor expo? It means support of our industry. So if you want to go to an outdoor show and have limited spectators and freedom of movement and have room and be comfortable and not have to deal with people walking slow or standing in the middle of the aisle or heavy parking or standing in line to get in, I encourage you to look at the other side of that coin, because the hunting industry needs support. The hunting industry needs positive support. And if you're not able to go to a sportsman show and enjoy the crowd and those that are supporting your hobbies as well, as much as you enjoy interacting with the vendors and seeing new gear, I think you need to look at how you're interacting with our outdoor community, because we're a dying breed. And if we don't support each other, our hobbies and our pastimes and our passions are going to go away.
I have to agree with you on that, and also say that while I'm not a crowd person, I look at shows like SHOT Show or the ATA show, and I mean, look at how many people you and I ran into just walking. And I mean, Tim Wells bumps into you and starts talking to you. I run into Waddell and start talking to him with our friend Chad. And I think what people really need to understand is they're there to support us as much as we're there to support them. And they're people just like we are. That's it. And they're willing to just talk to you. I would say, I mean, I have not run into very many, and I know there are a few, but I have not run into very many holier than thou hunters that don't want to talk to you. Yeah, you have to understand they have schedules and stuff like that to keep. You go to shows like this, they'll sit and talk to you for 20 minutes. I mean, you got to be careful. You start telling each other hunting stories, you'd be caught up talking for the entire show. So I'm glad that you're encouraging that, and I encourage that as well. Get out there, support these shows. If nothing else, go for one day. You mentioned that in our last podcast about the NRA show being very family friendly. Is the Pacific Northwest show very similar?
There were kids running around everywhere.
I think it'll be really good, and I really hope to hear more interest being in with kids and even with saddle hunting and just getting kids out there. Far too many kids are glued to their phones and computer screens these days. I mean, I know that would not fly with my family growing up, and I love being out there. Sunrise to sunset.
I want to tell you about an incident at the show that probably brought my biggest smile. Right in the middle of the hunting room, there was a family passed by me, 3 or 4 kids. One of them was in a stroller, and the father was pushing the stroller, and a couple of them were in camo, and they had a young child, not walking age, that was in the stroller trying to make elk calls vocally as he pushed that stroller by me. I think I smiled about that for a half an hour. It was so cute.
That's awesome. Give that kid a bugle tube and let him walk around.
Well, that's how we preserve our sport and our love for the outdoors. Teach it to our kids.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
Worked for me.
Yeah.
Al, after my seminar on Friday, my mom and dad left the show, and I went down to the Phelps game calls booth, and I hung out with the Phelps team and sold calls. Had a blast. Jason and Dirk, I reached out to them before I traveled out here and let them know that I was going to be at the show and that I had some seminars, and that if they were willing and interested, that I would hang out in the booth specifically for the beta call, because I had such great success with their new beta deer call this last November. And they said, yeah, if you want to come by the booth, come on over. So my dad and I went over before my seminar, introduced him to Dirk, and they're just so friendly and welcoming. And my dad and I both bought some turkey calls. And once my seminar was over, I returned to the booth and they pulled me right in, and I started interacting with patrons and started selling elk calls to the level of Dirk's wife came over and said, "Hey," because I was trying to grab different employees to make point of sales for folks that were interested in the calls. And Dirk's wife came over and said, "Hey, if you're going to be behind the booth selling calls, you're going to learn how to run things and just sell calls." So she ran me through their iPads, and I just started literally selling calls for Phelps when I was there. It was a grandma and grandpa came up to the counter, and they had a whole handful of calls. And most of those calls were for their grandkids. They were leaving the show with game calls for their grandkids as gifts from their attendance at the show, and to get them blowing calls at a young age. It's fantastic.
You really have to love seeing that, and seeing the fact that here you are. We talked about the last episode. You're not being paid by Latitude. You're not being paid by Phelps, but you're out there promoting hunting, promoting the love that you have for it, and just getting out there and enjoying it. And I don't know how you are with an elk call, but out here, there's not really much in the way of areas to practice. So I'm always practicing when I'm preparing for an elk hunt in my car. You should see the looks I get, especially when I put the windows down on the freeway. But you know what? I think that that's something to mention to other hunters or hunters that have kids. Look at that grandmother and grandfather that were getting all those calls. Encourage the kids to make noise. Mm-hmm. Get out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but have fun, because by the time they get older, I mean, look at us now. We're still not perfect, but we're out having fun. That's so encouraging to hear about shows like that. And shows like that are vastly different from like SHOT Show. You know, it's not, SHOT Show has its place. ATA has its place. There's other shows that the Western Hunting Expo in Utah is a great show from what I hear. I've never been to it. But there's more and more shows like this that I hear about that I feel like I need to get to. I need to experience. The show you talked about parking, and parking, I think, seems to be an issue with just about any show. There's a lot more people that want to drive, grab an Uber. The shows that I do go to, I basically Uber everywhere. What was the cost to get in? Not that it's an incredibly important piece, but I think that some people are turned away thinking that it's going to be incredibly expensive to go to one of these shows, and I don't think that's the case at all. What's an individual ticket cost to get in for the show?
$17 for a ticket per day for an adult, and $12 to park.
That's really inexpensive when you think about it. I think one of the important things that we haven't touched on yet, there's two things I want to touch on. First thing is, I want to know, were you able to find the snack shack?
There was plenty of snacks to be had. We came home with sacks of snacks. We what's the name of that company you found, Dad?
Greenville Farms. It's a family-owned business in Forest Grove, Oregon.
And they specialize in smoked cured meats. So we all came home with brats, pepperoni. They make a sauerkraut. They have delicious caraway sauerkraut, standard sauerkraut, garlic sauerkraut, and they had one other. I can't remember. I believe there was 4 sauerkrauts there. The caraway sauerkraut, holy smokes, was that good.
Yep, and salmon dip.
Smoked
they had
salmon.
A great salmon dip.
Oh, very nice.
They make a Reuben bratwurst. Al, ridiculous. Wow. Yeah. I have some Reuben bratwurst and some pepperoni sticks that are going in my Yeti hopper for the flight home today.
Excellent.
They had a myriad of jerky kiosks or exhibits, pepperoni, smoked nuts, other snacks. They had all kinds of spice exhibits, barbecue exhibits. They had some great food. You could get a hot dog, you could get a bratwurst, you could get a spicy bratwurst with all the fixings. There were some other food kiosks, but we didn't venture into those. We just went and had brats. They had an actual bar that adults could walk in and sit down and have a cold beer. They also had beer vendors, so you could walk around with a cold beer in your hand while you were enjoying the show. Montana Knife Company, Al. This was great. This brought a big smile to my face. I met the guys from Montana Knife Company last April, so April of 2022, at the Black Rifle Coffee Company veteran archery event down in Texas. They were there, supported the event, and I left that event with a speed goat. Great knife. Used that knife to process my deer with you in Nebraska. Montana Knife Company had a really nice exhibit at the show, and I stopped and chatted with them, and we talked about their knives and different things, and went on our way. And yesterday, I forget, we were at a booth, and I saw a guy drinking a Big Truck Pale Ale. Big Truck is a microbrewery in Maryland on the East Coast, and I'm in Portland, Oregon, looking at a guy drinking a can of Big Truck beer. And they don't distribute, as far as I know, out to the West Coast. So it really surprised me. So I asked him, I said, hey, where did you get that Big Truck at? Because I'm a big fan of Big Truck. And he said, the guys at the Montana Knife Company have it. If you buy a knife, you get an ice cold beer. I'm like, well, that's brilliant. And we had been there for about an hour. It was time for Dad to have a break. So I went and sat him down in a chair and opened up a pack of our newly purchased pepperoni sticks for him to keep him entertained. And I went over to the Montana Knife Company booth again, and I grabbed one of the guys and I said, hey, I heard a rumor that you guys have Big Truck on ice. And he looked at me, he said, yeah. How do you know that? And I said, well, because I saw a guy and he told me how I got it. And I said, I don't need to buy another knife today because I love my speed goat, but I have a $20 bill if you'll give me one of those cold cans of Big Truck. And he just started laughing. He's like, Aaron, I'll just give you one, man. So I did. I had an ice cold Big Truck in Portland, Oregon. I would have never in my mind thought that I would see a Big Truck out here. It was great.
Your eyes are still sharp, so that's good.
Yeah, no, it was great.
I think you touched on something, and I want to point this out for our listeners. Whether it's the Pacific Northwest Sportsman's Expo or the NRA, the Great American Outdoor Show in Pennsylvania, these shows are not your typical trade shows where you go, you place orders, or you go and you just talk to people and think about it. You can actually purchase items from these shows. And that is something that I love. I love going there with a pocket full of money saying, okay, I really shouldn't spend any more money on hunting gear, but let me look around. And when you get to go to some place like that, you don't have to wait. If you find something you like, you can typically get it right then and there.
You need to have a budget when you come to an outdoor show.
What's a budget? Speaking of that, Jake, you mentioned that you booked a fishing trip and a turkey hunt. What are you going to be fishing for?
Going to fish in April for king salmon with probably my favorite fishing guide. He's Southwest Washington guide, 30 years of guiding service. He is personable. He is knowledgeable. When he's working in the boat, he shows you what he's doing and why he's doing it and how that affects, why that improves your chances of catching fish. When you're done at the end of the day, you've not only caught fish, but you know how and why you caught them, and you can actually do it somewhere else on your own. I mean, it's really a full day learning experience. And I've always liked to fish. It's called Steve's Guided Adventures. He used to do a little hunting. Now he's all fishing, and he fishes salmon, steelhead, sturgeon, walleyes. He travels around Northwest Oregon and Southwest Washington, and he's just a great guide. He can put you on the fishing trip of your dreams. It's just really fun. So we're going to catch salmon in April, and I'm hunting in Oregon with a man named Jody Smith. Excellent turkey caller, very knowledgeable about the life of turkeys. He guides on several different properties in his area, and he lives in an area that has the highest density of turkey population anywhere on the West Coast. Sounds like a no-brainer to me. I signed up immediately.
Yeah. Sounds like a no-brainer to me as well.
It's my first guided turkey hunt. I've always always hunted them on my own, always hunted it here in Southwest Washington and had good luck. But this will be a new experience for me. I wanted to do that before I got too old to walk, and I'm getting there quicker than I wanted to.
Well, we're going to have to make sure to have you back on after your hunts and after your fishing trip and hear how they went.
Oh, they're going to go great.
I really like hearing about guides like Steve that explain things to you. They don't over explain, but they involve you. It's not just you're there filling up a seat, throwing, casting a rod, whatever.
Yeah.
You're part of the adventure. And I think that is really key.
You don't feel like a client. You feel like family when you fish with Steve.
Awesome. Makes me want to go fish with him.
Yeah, you should.
Steve does not act like what he's doing is a trade secret, or that only he knows what it is and how to do it. And he's trying to keep other people from learning how to do it, as if that's going to, help secure future business for him. He likes to see people learn, and he's all about showing you what he's doing and how to do it right. He's a great man. He's also a fantastic taxidermist.
Man of many trades.
Yep. He loves the outdoors.
There's a show out here, and I won't name the show, but it's basically just fishing adventure, all just guide, and just trying to sell you on their services. But I have yet to find something where they involve you. And I like hearing about that atmosphere, that it's not just a sales pitch. This is what they do. They love it. They have fun. They enjoy it. And it's key for I say younger generation, but older generation too. There's people that just don't want to hunt anymore, or don't want to fish anymore because of how it's pushed in certain areas. You can still get out there and have fun. You just got to find it. You got to find that right support system and find the right people to be around. That's it's encouraging to hear about shows like this, shows that I've heard about, but I've never talked to anybody that have actually gone. So it's great getting the perspective from you two guys about that.
Yeah, Al, it's a shame that you weren't able to make it up here to this show. The Portland Expo it's a great show. We talked about this several times over the last week. Blacktail deer, Roosevelt elk, salmon, and steelhead are in a very small location of the United States. I didn't word that the best. I could have found other words, but the whitetail industry and the bass industry are the two largest industries in the world, outdoor wise. Whitetail hunting is the largest hunting industry in the world, and bass fishing is the largest fishery in the world for sporting. And being up here in the Northwest, when you go through catalogs and you go through magazines and you look on the Cabela's website, or the Sportsman's Warehouse website, or the Shields website, or, pick your big brick and mortar outdoor store, the majority of their stuff is focused on bass fishing, whitetail hunting, turkey hunting, and a bunch of saltwater stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When you come out here to the Pacific Northwest, you have a different view of hunting and fishing equipment, a completely different environment. You go from what people call mountains on the East Coast. Those are the foothills out West, and it's a completely different environment. So the way they hunt, the gear they use, their thought process, it's different. And it's a lot of fun to be back out here and getting back to my roots and enjoying what I grew up doing. Being around some of the prominent outdoor faces and names, it was great. Again, born and raised were there. They had a big booth. I dropped a business card off with Trent and let him know that whenever they wanted to start exploring the world of tree saddles and adding tree saddles to their toolbox, to give me a call. Chatted with BMAC from Hushin. A couple of the guys from Hushin were there, but I was able to chat with BMAC for a minute. We sat and listened to Randy Newberg speak. He opened. He had his seminar was the hour time slot before mine on Friday. So we went in early and we listened to Randy for a little bit. We hung out with Phelps, Jason, and Dirk and their crew. Stellar. That's just a fantastic company. Who else did we see and meet? I bumped into several folks that I grew up with, went to high school with, or that I know from the Washougal, Camas, Washougal area. So it was great to see some familiar faces. I think those are really all the. There was other big names there. Bow Spider has been on their show tour. David, he's originally from the Pacific Northwest. My dad was able to meet David from Bow Spider and see what a bow spider is.
Nice young man.
Yep, David's a great guy, very passionate in the outdoors. And they this show is different. They have a fishing pond for kids, and they have a casting area where they'll have fly fishermen or fishermen, throwing baits and casting. They have created a kayak pond, Al, and they put it's sponsored by Old Town Kayaks or Old Town Canoes, and they have kayak seminars, fishing from kayak seminars running all day, every day.
Really?
And yeah. A guy that I served in the Navy with, he's from Central Oregon. When I say Central Oregon, they live in Salem, so it's North Central. He has 2 boys. They are both huge in the outdoors. They're both competitive bass fishermen, and one of them is sponsored by Old Town. So Jody is my buddy from the Navy. His son is Cody. I have not seen Cody since he was probably 5 years old. This is 1997, I think. And Cody was at the show yesterday promoting Old Town Kayaks, and he was doing a seminar. So I was able to bump into Cody and chat with him for a little bit. Again, the last time I saw him, he was 5. He's a grown man now. It was great.
It's so cool to me to put myself in your position and think about that while our bodies might be getting older, we're still kids. We love this stuff, and it's kind of amazing to see see a guy that you knew as a kid, 30 some, you're 30 years old now or something, that you're like, oh, okay, I knew you were when you were this tall, but you're still that kid.
He asked me, he said, when's the last time you think that you saw me? I was like, oh, Cody, you are potentially still wearing diapers.
That's so funny.
It was great. I shared a couple of good stories with him that, from as a kid, that one of them he had never even heard before. It's not one that I can share on the podcast, but it's one of my favorite all-time stories, period. If Jody listens to this podcast, he'll know exactly what story I'm talking about. It involves his son Cody and his wife and his in-laws in their living room.
And that's all you need to say, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's a great story.
I want to touch on the fact that you can book a fishing trip or a hunt. They're not out of this world pricey. Some are, but most people, if you really want to do something, you can do it. You can book it at one of these shows, and there's people willing to work with you to get you out there. And I would encourage anybody that wants to go on a steelhead trip or king salmon trip, or go for turkeys, or go for a private elk hunt or blacktail hunt, do it. Get out there and do it. Now, personally, I'm one of those guys that I will probably wait until Jake, like I'm your age, that I decide, okay, I'm finally going to book, this turkey hunt or whatever, just because I really like doing it on my own. But I also don't always like to hunt on my own. I would much rather go to Nebraska, hunt with Aaron, and come home empty-handed than just go out for a week by myself. And I really encourage people to get out there, and you're going to find a lot more like-minded people that way.
100% agree, Al. Yeah, it's when you can connect with somebody at that level, there's so many positive aspects involved. There's camaraderie, there's trust, there's positive engagement. It's healthy. You're being active, and depending upon at what level you take that activity. So, for instance, you and I, we plan. If we know we're going on a hunt together, we plan for the entire year. It's not just putting a mark on a calendar saying, hey, we're going to go hunt here, and then we don't talk to each other about it for 9 months. We're engaging that entire time leading up to that hunt. And it's exciting.
It is. You don't get bored. You're always thinking of hunting spots or food to take or locations to hunt, travel. I mean, we're constantly talking about it. And sometimes it's the same thing. Most of the time it's not. I don't know how many times you and I shared, GPS coordinates on the map of Nebraska. I'm looking forward to that for other areas as well.
Me too. My dad and I, we don't get to hunt together anymore. But
Very seldom.
But what we do is we spend time on the phone, texting or emailing, and we talk about it. So if I'm going to a new area, we start talking about it. That'll start researching it as well. New gear, new tactics. We talk about all of it, or we talk about why we do things because we've been doing it for 30 years, because there's some things that you want to change and there's other things that never change. And so you talk about all of that, or hey, let's talk about this new caliber, or let's talk about the old caliber and what we're doing with it to be more proficient. Or if I pick up a new gun or a new fishing rod, or if, when I go catch a new species of fish, we get on the phone and we talk about it. It's great.
Or when you down a 170-inch whitetail buck and you call your dad. I mean, that's to be on the other side of that and hearing that, Jake, I could only imagine how great you felt getting that call.
I did. It's I've slowed down a little bit, and so now I live a lot of my hunting life through Aaron. He's doing things that I dreamed about doing, but life situations maybe prevented me from doing that, or even family. I hunted with my family and friends my whole life. So going on a guided trip was not something that any of us could afford, or that we wanted to spend the money on, because it would only be one or two of us, not the whole group that went. And now I'm older. Our hunting group has kind of broken down. The kids grew up. A lot of them moved away. The older, some have died, some are still alive, but we're older. So going with a guide now becomes a reasonable thing to do. And even though it's late in life, I know I'm going to learn a lot from it. He's going to teach me things that maybe I've never done. I'm going to go to areas I've never been to. It's just another side of our sport that I wished I could have done sooner in life. Would have been really, really interesting to make friends and see places. So I'm really looking forward to it, and you should do it now.
It's encouraging to hear those words that you're still learning too. And in all my seminars, the two things I tell everybody is, one, I'm not an expert. I don't care how long I've been hunting. I'm not an expert. Don't ever call me that. Second thing is, the day that I stop learning, I will hang up my bow and I will hang up my rifle, because I always enjoy learning something new. I mean, every day Aaron and I hunted, I probably learned a couple things every day. Just a new tactic, a new way to do something, a new way to look at something. It's incredible to be able to do that. And it can be from a novice to someone that's an experienced hunter. Keep your mind open.
Chubbs, I've had double shoulder replacements, so I can't shoot heavy calibers or big shotguns. So I don't want to quit turkey hunting. So I bought a 410. I already own a 410, but I didn't have a 410 turkey gun. So now I have a 410 turkey gun, and the guide that I'm going with is really excited. I'll be the first client he's ever had that's taken a 410 out for turkeys. But it's a little Mossberg semi-automatic with a turkey choke. It's a specific turkey gun. It's camouflage. It's got fiber optic sights. It shoots a tighter pattern than my 12 gauge did. And it has no recoil, so I can shoot it off of these mechanical shoulders.
Nice.
Yeah. So you just adjust as your life changes, you adjust to what you have to do to keep doing the sport.
Very true words. You can always be out there. And on the flip side, Sprocket, I think one of the things that I would encourage to others that don't have a podcast or a blog or whatever is just a hunter. I mean, how many times have you and I been to these shows and we're talking to people handing out business cards? You don't have to necessarily hand out business cards, but just talk to people. You never know what is going to pop up down the line. You make a good impression, people remember you. And there might be an opportunity that pops up 2, 3, 4 years. You don't know what God has planned for you. And it could be, hey, Aaron, I remember meeting you at the show 5 years ago. We're going to be in your neck of the woods. Hey, can you take us out sick of deer hunting? Or can you show us? People will remember that. And it's great to be able to make those connections.
A smile and a handshake, Al, are two of the most powerful tools you can keep in your pockets. And they're positive.
Absolutely. Walking around the shows, we've seen it. If you walk around that show with a smug face, your hands in your pockets, you're not going to enjoy yourself as much as if you were just, how are you? I've driven people nuts before with a smile, just walking up, what's going on? Shake their hand, bug them to talk to them, and they love it. Most love it.
They do, Al. I'm very conscientious about that when I'm at a show with Latitude Outdoors. When people walk by the exhibit, if they stop and start looking at the gear, you have to be really proactive and and pay attention to that, because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. If I walk up to an exhibit and I'm looking at your stuff, and I'm not saying that I need to be catered to, I'm just stating that if I walk up to your exhibit and I'm showing interest in what it is you're promoting or selling, and you look me in the face and you don't say hi, you don't smile, you don't ask me if I have questions, you just stand there and look at me, or if you go back to your coworker and keep having your conversation about your cell phone or the beer you drank the night before or where you had dinner the night before, and I'm standing there looking at your stuff, and if I'm there for more than 45 seconds to a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and you do not engage with me, I will never look at your product again. I'm moving on. I'm going to go find another person, another company that has something similar, that wants to be friendly and shake my hand and talk to me, because I love to shake hands and smile and talk. And Al, I know you feel the same way. Warranty, customer service, and quality of material are huge priorities for us in our outdoor endeavors. Part of our success is based upon being able to rely on your equipment. And a lot of that starts with the way owners or employees interact with their customers. I'm huge about that. When I'm in the Latitude booth, I am looking to make people happy, spark their interest, and educate them. It's a priority of mine.
I have to agree 100%. You and I have experienced that separately and together, and nothing bothers me at a show more than standing right next to a sales manager or a salesman, and they're just talking with their buddies. And I'm talking buddies like other salesmen. If someone steps into that booth, they should be splitting off right away and talking. And I've had to teach myself. I've been in booths before that I'm not associated with. I might use their equipment, but I've had people come up to me and ask, hey, do you work here? Or I have a question about this. And I used to be standoffish because I didn't want to upset the owners or the salesmen that were there. But I've found that they like that because it makes their job easier, because you're actually using the equipment. And you can tell them, hey, I don't work here, but I use this here or that, and I'm trying this out. Hey, where do you hunt? Strike up a conversation. I've met more people doing that than standing on the sidelines just with my hands in my pockets. Sounds like you guys both had a really great show. Great time together.
We did.
I'd say so. Yes.
We've had some great food this week, Al.
Oh my.
We have smoked fish. We have smoked a pork butt. We've had
venison roast. We smoked
a venison roast. What else have we had? We've had Burgerville, Al. So for those that don't know, there's that line. Out here in the Pacific Northwest, and very specific to Southwest Washington, and I think 2 locations in Portland, one in Portland and one in Hood River, there is a burger chain here called Burgerville. It's an icon to this small region.
Started in the 60s, family owned.
And I think they have maybe 5 stores total, 5 or 6 tops.
They may have more than that.
There's not very many.
But it is a Portland, Vancouver burger chain. Delicious.
They have their special sauce, and it's different. Burgerville sauce is different than any other special sauce that most people, when they say it's a special sauce, it's Thousand Island with a certain amount of ketchup mixed into it. Yeah. Burgerville sauce is all on its own. It's incredible. So we've had Burgerville multiple times.
Give or take a year. They opened in about 1964 with their first location in Vancouver, Washington. And they ran a small but good tasting burger called their original hamburger. 19 cents a piece or 6 for $1. I ate thousands of those when I was young. And now, all these years later, you can still go to Burgerville and order the original burger. It's about $1.19 or $1.29, something like that. It's not 19 cents anymore, but it's exactly like it was in the 60s. So it's really nostalgic to go to Burgerville. We go to Burgerville and get the burger that we ate before. It's really good. And they make a whole chain of burgers, and they're all really good. And, they're a little more deluxe, but the old original burger brings back memories.
And Al, it's simple. It's It's a bun, piece of meat. If you get the original hamburger, bun, piece of meat, couple of pickles, a little bit of ketchup,
Special sauce.
and a special sauce. Now, myself, I order that burger with it's called extra spread, so extra sauce and onions. That's how I want my original burger. But they have incredible halibut fish and chips. I had a fish sandwich yesterday. First time I ever had their fish sandwich. It was really, really good. They call it the Colossal Burger, and they have a bacon cheeseburger. They have a whole bunch of other burgers, but to go to Burgerville and have the original hamburger with extra spread and onions. When I land in Portland and somebody picks me up and we drive back home to Washougal, it's about a 20-minute drive. If Burgerville is open, it's the first. I don't even come home first. We go through the drive-through with my bags in the car.
Nice. Sounds like you guys weren't gonna be hungry.
No,
while you were there.
Went to Burgerville 3 times in 8 days.
Now you're making me hungry. Then again, I'm always hungry, but
And they have a Burgerville in the Portland airport. So if I have time moving through the airport today, and it's in the portion of the airport that I'll be maneuvering through to get to American Airlines, I will probably grab a couple of burgers for my flight. So I'm potentially hitting Burgerville 4 times in 8 days.
you're gonna make some other people on the flight a little bit jealous and envious that where's that burger smell coming from?
It's my intentions.
That gives me a place to visit when hopefully I can get up to the Pacific Northwest at some point, and I'm sure I will. I've found that in the past 5-6 years, I've ventured out more and more and more to get to different places because when you're younger, you think you can't do it. It's either out of your budget or it's too far, and we found that none of it's too far, and you can always find a way to afford it in some way, shape, or form.
Might just have to plan for it a little bit.
That's it. Budget. We started off with budget. We can end with budget. You got to have a little bit of a budget. And I think that is everything is within reach. You can do any of that if you put your mind to it.
I agree. Well, we've been going at it for an hour and a half, Al.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. We're going to have to follow up with this here in a couple months. Going to live vicariously through Jake and hear about his fishing trip and his turkey hunt. And it'll be another really good episode, I'm sure.
Maybe I teach my dad how to access Zoom, and after his turkey hunt, maybe we'll try to do a podcast with the 3 of us remotely, and Dad can tell us all about his turkey hunt.
Or you could just fly out here for a couple of days.
See, that's how my dad would be.
Yeah.
Well, it's been interesting and a lot of fun sharing this time with you celebrities, I'll have to say. My first experience.
I wouldn't go that far, but I guess Santa Claus is a kind of a celebrity.
Al's
me.
Definitely an influencer.
Yeah. I won't put that hashtag on my social media anywhere. That's for sure.
It's his favorite word.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I despise it.
He's an epic influencer.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast.
I'm gonna make that T-shirt for Chubbs. It's gonna say "I am Chubbs" # epic influencer.
Oh, and I'd wear it too because the people that know me would laugh. Well, gentlemen, it has been great talking with you.
Yes.
I really enjoyed this. I'm a little bit sad that we have to close this out, but I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
So, Chubbs, the sports shows, that's where you can find information on the 3 outdoor shows here in the Pacific Northwest. That's their Instagram name is The Sports Shows. The one in Portland is specifically the Pacific Northwest Sportsman's Show. You can find it easily on the internet. If you're interested in attending a show, if you've never been to the Pacific Northwest, or if you are a resident or a local of the Pacific Northwest, strongly recommend that you attend this Sportsman Show next February. You will have a great time. You'll meet some great people. You'll see some great stuff. If you want to reach out to us meaning Sprocket and Chubbs, you can reach us at our email at sprocketandchubbs@gmail.com. We do not have a website as of yet. However, you can reach Chubbs at thesocalbowhunter.com And you can reach me at limitlessoutdoors.com and or search for us on Facebook and Instagram.
Not that hard to find, that's for sure.
No, not at all. And stay tuned for whatever it is that we think that we're going to talk about next. I think it might be a backcountry scouting trip. Not sure, maybe.
Yeah.
There's so many things to talk about.
There are exciting things, exciting opportunities.
All right, Chubbs. Well, thanks for having coffee with me and my old man this morning.
Pleased to meet you, sir.
Pleased to meet you. Pleasure's mine.
Be limitless, Al.
Gentlemen, have yourselves a great day.
That brings a much anticipated podcast recording to an end. The bond between a father and his son in the outdoors has been shared for generations through journals, stories, legends, and drawn or painted on the walls of caves. To quote Fred Bear, hardships are quickly forgotten. Intense heat, bitter cold, rain and snow, fatigue, and luckless hunting fade quickly into memories of great fellowship, thoughts of beautiful country, pleasant camps, and happy campfires. From the three of us here, we would like to thank you for listening in on another episode of Sprocket and Chubbs.